As much as we might want to speculate about possibly trading him, the Cincinnati Reds love the fact that Ke'Bryan Hayes is their third baseman.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. My name is Jeff Carr, and I have been a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan, and I'm glad that you're alongside me here today. Been doing this podcast now for 7 seasons. This is like my 8th offseason, something like that. It feels like forever. And we talk about the Reds every single day, even through the winter months. I know it's freezing cold outside, but let's talk some baseball here today, and we're going to do it with Tim Daniel. He's joining me here today. We are going to talk about a poll that Gordon Whitmire took of MLB executives and why they don't see the Reds as one of the favorites in the NL Central to be a World Series team, much less the rest of the National League, and why the outcome was very predictable. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. In just a few minutes, I want to dissect exactly what Gavin Lux' role is. Okay, sure, he's at the end of the bench. When do you actually play him? When do you actually use him? And what is his value to this team? That'll be here in a few minutes. We will begin, though, with Ke'Bryan Hayes and why he's not going anywhere this offseason, at least, as according to the Cincinnati Reds. Here on the Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day, and we are the #1 sports podcast network in the country. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first purchase. And joining me here today is the man in charge of the Reds postcast, the best postcast in all of baseball. He is Tim Daniel. Tim, what you got for me, man?
So, Jeff, we have some fan controversy coming our way today. I don't know if you've seen.
That
but
never happens. Due
to the late time of Reds Fest this year, the Reds are canceling the Caravan Tour.
I did see that. And you know, I understand it from the players' perspective. That's the thing that I think that needs to be considered here. But from a fan, like, I just want more touch points with my team. Give me more touch points with my team throughout the offseason. However they could have made that happen is fine. But they kind of did that Reds thing where it's just like, well, the Caravan happens in January, but since we're doing other things in January, can't do the Caravan. Maybe do the Caravan in December. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll admit, I actually really like that Reds Fest is in January, like a couple weeks before pitchers and catchers report.
I agree.
I really like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about the Caravan when they got announced Reds Fest. So I kind of feel bad for like the people of like West Virginia and the people who are like, you can't make it to Cincinnati in the winter when it's snowing and stuff. So
right.
Yeah.
I liked that the team came to them and they basically staked their claim. Like if this were some sort of, you know, I don't know, World War II thing, like they stayed, you know, or just a war, like these are our boundaries. And they went all the way down to Nashville and they're just like, aha, Atlanta, what do you have to say about that? Anyway, it was fun to see things like that. But yeah, I really hope they bring it back in years to come and still think about the Reds Fest thing. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the offseason because I do have some thoughts about the times with Reds Fest, but especially considering our friend Steve will be making the trip in January, at least as far as I've heard. But speaking of Steve, he's not going to be with us this week because he's traveling other places.
Shocking.
He left an island to go to the ocean in another part of the ocean and go to another island. Make sense of that, what you will. So Tim is with me here today, and Steve and I had this discussion. I had a couple of different discussions this past week when it comes to Ke'Bryan Hayes. And I think that everybody would agree that you want a better bat at that position, but there is no better glove. You cannot find a better glove at third base. I would argue that the Reds have found their best glove that they've ever had in the era of defensive runs saved. Defensive runs saved all the way back to 2003. That's when that metric began. I am including Brandon Phillips in this argument. There is an argument to be made that Ke'Bryan Hayes is a better glove than Brandon Phillips. So with that being said, from the Reds' perspective, they have their third baseman. There is no reason to move on from him. They have him locked down for the next couple of years. And because of that, and because of the fact that he really solidifies the left side of the field with Elly De La Cruz now that he has his other leg back and healthy again, presumably, there's no reason to believe that they're going to trade him.
Absolutely not. And to be honest, I think it's the right thing. I think it makes so much sense to keep him in Cincinnati. I kind of think we figured he wasn't getting traded when we found out he was on the bobblehead promotional schedule. The Reds don't like to, not have a player
Well,
there for the
not
bobblehead
trade
day.
him, but they might send him down CES.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. But with that in mind, obviously, like you said, I think baseball in general, I mean, there are teams who have guys that like they are there strictly for defense. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Now, very small sample size when he came over in the trade, hit fairly well for a little while.
Yep.
Had about 3 or 4 weeks there where he was really hot. His August was actually, for Ke'Bryan Hayes standards, really good.
Yes.
And I feel like if you get that August bat, then you probably feel like you're comfortable there. I think the other thing here that you have to go on the other side of this, as far as the risk end, is if you're going to go that route, which again, I'm all for, hit him 9th, fine by me, then you do need a lot more from the rest of your lineup. You need Matt McLain to get back to who we think Matt McLain can be. You can't play Elly De La Cruz on one leg. You can't have an outfield who is very stagnant, where TJ Friedl is your best hitting outfielder. You can't rely on an Austin Hayes to hope to God that he can get hot and stay on the field. You can't have a Gavin Lux, which we're going to get to later. So if you're going to go this route, which again, I think is the right route, because I do think it matters to have someone at the hot corner who can make sure a ball doesn't dribble into the corner, dribble to the outfield corner. But with that in mind, that can't be your only plan. If you're going to have him out there, then you need to be able to have someone who can pick up his bat.
That's the biggest part of this plan. And it still points to the need for the Reds to go get at least one more bat, preferably 2, but definitely somebody to shore up other positions. Because you're right. Like, you cannot have a glove first third baseman if you also look over on the other side of the diamond and you have a glove first baseman and you have a glove first second baseman, and then in the outfield you have a glove first. You can't just go glove first, because eventually you got to score 1. You can hold the other team to 0, but if you don't score 1, then the game never ends. Then we need to end the game at some point. So I think that there's a couple of different angles to this. That's the first one. The other one is hope. As much as we hate the fact that the Reds do this, They do this every year. And we are imploring for them to stop and to actually have real plans and not just hope. But until I see that happen, that's what I know the Reds to be. And the Reds will hope that Ke'Bryan Hayes can give them like a 90 OPS plus, not even be a league average hitter. It feels like if Ke'Bryan Hayes is a league average hitter with a 100 OPS plus, we could be talking about a 4 or 5 win guy. His glove is that good, because as a 86 OPS plus, what he was last year, which is 14% below league average, that's not very good. He still was almost a 2-win player because of how good his glove is. So he is so valuable in that part of the game that as long as you have him on the field, and he is buoying Elly, because I think that Elly will get better defensively.
Yep.
I believe that, because he knows in his heart of hearts, if he ain't better defensively at shortstop this year, he better start working out that larger glove in the outfield. But I think that he will get better, and part of that reason will be because he has Ke'Bryan Hayes, a platinum glove potential player, playing alongside him.
Yeah, I mean, if we go in Quidditch terms, Ke'Bryan Hayes is a seeker, right? You got one job, and you can manage the game on your one thing you can do best. Yes. And so I feel like there is where we're kind of have the best luck. Yeah, I'm pretty good at the nicknames, right? We got Winter Soldier Brandon for Tony Santi on this year, so our listeners were using that, so I appreciate it. And then seeker, let's go with it. But at the end of the day, yeah, I feel like with this, what you've been said, like. One, I'm with you. Elly De La Cruz should be the shortstop. He at least deserves another chance. When you had Lance on a couple weeks ago, I loved everything Lance said about it. As far as like, look, he's young. If he ends up going to Cooperstown, he won't be the first Hall of Famer to lead the league in errors. That's way down the road, obviously. But and I don't want to turn this into an Elly De La Cruz conversation by any means. But yeah, having Ke'Bryan Hayes there, having the ability he has to just covered third base, and Elly De La Cruz, who you can say all these things about the errors and this and that, but still no one at shortstop has better range than him. So I feel like it could definitely be a strength, and I know our listeners are probably going to be really mad at us. They're going to say stuff in the chat about center field, but let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens this year.
And that's what the Reds are going to do, because that's what the Reds always do. And that's part of what we want to cover in the offseason. As much as we have ideas of how we think the Reds should operate, there's also the other side that is reality and what the Reds will do in their operation. And I don't think that we will totally agree with everything. And this is one of those things that Reds country is going to be at odds with the Reds about. But the Reds are going to at least give this another year. They're going to give Key Brian Hayes as their everyday third baseman a whole year. And they're going to give Elly another year at shortstop. And that's why Key Brian Hayes isn't going anywhere. Somebody else who isn't going anywhere because we thought he might get non-tendered, but he didn't, and he's going to be here next year. That's Gavin Lux. Steve and I pondered whether he should be at the end of the bench, but you still got to have a role on the team. And the role for Gavin Lux is very, very foggy right now. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. This Sunday is a perfect example of a great time to use FanDuel for some live betting, because right now the Bengals are 5.5-point underdogs against Buffalo. And I think that line's going to move all over the place during this game, because I don't think people understand the Bengals with Joe Burrow. I don't think I understand the Bengals with Joe Burrow. So check out FanDuel live during that game. I don't know about 5.5, but that line probably is going to go crazy throughout the game. And if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you for making Locked On Reds part of your everyday routine. Thank you for you're an everydayer, and if you're making us your first listen, always appreciate that. If you're not an everydayer, hit that subscribe button, become one, and make sure you're with us all throughout the offseason. We're talking Reds every single day here. Hey, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the country. All right, Tim, as we get into this offseason, there was a move that I kind of found it intriguing. Steve thought it was elementary, but I thought it was intriguing that the Reds kept Gavin Lux, because there are certain inefficiencies within his game that seem to match up with the rest of the roster, and I don't necessarily know the role that he fills. But I begrudge that Steve is probably right. He's probably the end of the bench guy, but the end of the bench guy still got to get in the ball game every so often. I mean, you cannot have a guy just sitting down there eating sunflower seeds, stealing signs from the other team. And the reason that I say that is because that's what I did in high school. I really didn't play that much. I just watched. But when it comes to Gavin Lux, he's going to be getting paid about $4 million, probably $5 million, at least through, what people are estimating his arbitration might look like. So with that, you got to bring some value. And he's got a lot of weird things where it's like, yes, he's a good on-base guy. Yes, he can hit righties, but it's not going to be for power. And defensively, we're not sure where he fits.
So, not to make another pop culture reference here, but this is the Office Space scene where they go, what exactly is that you do here?
Yes. We are. Oh, what are their names? We're the Bobs. We're the Bobs sitting across the table from Gavin Lux. Oh, what does it? Let's just say you do.
Yes. And that's where I'm at here, because if your game plan once again is he's going to be your left fielder against right-handed pitching, then we should all probably go to church every Sunday and pray that this is going to go for the best. Are you going to platoon?
The only thing that helps it. Yeah.
Are you going to platoon him with Matt McLain? Are we sure that's a good idea? Because the ceiling of Matt McLain still looks like a guy that we can all count on. I'm not.
And statistically, Gavin Lux would play more than Matt McLain, because you face more righties than you face lefties.
Correct. Is he going to be in the mix at first base with Sal Stewart? Does that make any sense whatsoever for your team? No. By your face, you have the same reaction I do. No. So I don't know what he provides to the team, because it's not like he's like, and like you've joked about it, and I think it's one of the funnier baseball jokes out there. It's like, if there was a slapstick hitting derby, he would be a great player in that.
Great piece of hitting. All great piece of hitting. Oh yeah.
Yes. But what does he bring you in a situation that like Miguel Andujar doesn't. Now, I don't know if the Reds are going to bring back Miguel Andujar. I hope they do. But what is
Snaps? I'd rather have Andujar.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And so that's where I'm kind of like, if that's the decision you're making, then where are you going with this route? And for him, I just don't know what he brings to the team at this point. I don't dislike him. I think he's a fine baseball player. I appreciate that he can work a count. I appreciate that he's a good contact guy. But in a team that really lacks power, like, what necessarily is he going to bring to you?
I wonder if the Reds have backed themselves into a corner with Chris Valaika, in that Gavin Lux is who Chris Valaika wants every hitter to be. A guy who works.
Barry Larkin too.
A guy who forces other pitchers to throw a lot. But when it comes down to swinging the bat, it's a single or it's a gap double, or you hope it's a windy day with the wind just blowing crazy out. Because whenever he hit fly balls last year, they weren't good. Like, according to Fangraphs, he hit under 200 when he hit the ball in the air. He hit like 770 when he hit line drives, but again, he didn't do that a lot. When he did, they were good, but it's not as if that was the majority of the time. And so you're talking about a guy that hits a lot of ground balls that you're just hoping the BABIP remains high, because last year his batting average on balls in play, his BABIP, we talk about a lot, everydayers know, was 351. Now that's fine if you're Elly, because Elly is speed. Gavin Lux isn't necessarily speed. So 351 would led me to believe he was getting lucky with the numbers that he was posting. So you've got to factor that into everything else, because I know that there are people that are saying, man, this guy brings an at bat to the plate that not a lot of guys on this team do. And I understand that. But when it comes down to what the damage is, the damage really isn't that substantial whenever he swings the bat. And so I want more of that on this roster. And it felt like he was an easy, like, all right, thank you for your service in 2025. We're going to see you out the door. Because here's the other part of it. Let's say whatever role he is cast in, he does an okay job this year. He's a free agent next year. So it's not as if you've got this guy for a long time and you can develop him. Like, this is it. This is his last year of arbitration, and he's going to hit the open market next year. And I shudder to think that if anybody's trying to make an argument that he's a contract extension candidate.
I don't see how he can be.
Not right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he can develop. Can he develop it? I don't know that he can. Not in 1 year.
Right. Yeah. And I just, at this point where the Reds are at, I don't know how much he fits the timeline of where they're trying to get. If they're trying to build off of this playoff appearance, get better, maybe win a playoff game next year, or, call me crazy, a series. Yeah, I know.
Haven't had enough coffee.
Yeah, I don't know if he's a guy who's going to help you kind of get that next level. And I get it. Someone can, give me the benefit of the doubt with the 2024 run he made with the Dodgers, where he was really good in the second half of the year, bled it through their World Series win. But I don't think he's doing that here, because we don't have a Mookie Betts or a Freddie Freeman around him.
And I feel like there are other people that are probably saying, but the personality factor of it all, fine. Now we're talking about Jonathan India 2.0.
Correct.
That's
we're
exactly
right back
where we are with that.
Leader. Yeah.
Yeah, like I get like personalities and things like that. Like, honestly, I still think that Matt McLain should be that guy, and we'll see him get better this year. I think he's going to break out. But on top of that, he's got a great personality to be the leader type of dude. So he's your guy. So you don't really need leadership on this team. I think leadership grows within the team that you build. You don't have to go find it. And so I wonder a little bit, like, if you need a guy that's going to come off the bench and move the conveyor belt of the lineup along, okay, Gavin Lux is your guy. I don't know what other role he fills other than that. That kind of feels like the thing that he can do, because defensively, I just don't love him. He's not as good as Matt McLain at second base. He's far worse than anybody else in left field. He's definitely worse than Key Bryant, because everybody's worse than Key Bryant Hayes at third base. And those are the positions he plays. And first base, I know he was taking grounders there last year. Again, Sal Stewart rather have there. Spencer Steer rather have there. And I don't care about platoons with either one of those guys right now, because Spencer Steer doesn't really have a split. And then when it comes to Sal Stewart, I don't know what I don't know about him. I know that he's got power, and I know Gavin Lux doesn't. So I just don't want to see him taking playing time away from anybody else on this team.
I actually, while you were talking, went ahead and pulled up his Savant page, and
It's a lot of blue.
There's a lot of blue. To put in context, his expected batting average was 243. His expected slugging was 327. His barrel rate is in the 10th percentile at 3.6, and
League average was 10%, and he's at 3.
And his hard hit rate was in the 23rd percentile at 36.9. And don't even get started on the bat speed.
Right. And I think that we're kind of to the point where it's like, this kind of feels like the old Southern trick of, God love their heart, it kind of feels like anything else.
6 of those guys in your lineup.
It feels like anything else we say after this. It just feels like we're just absolutely dumping on Gavin Lux. And I hate to do that on one of our own guys, but like trying to figure out his role on this team for 2026 is very, very difficult. And it's kind of like, now I was going to make a food reference. Anyway, I'll try to rehab myself while Steve's away and not make too many food references. But I know this. I just don't see. It's like, all right, let's make a Star Wars reference. It's like, Yoda saying, always emotion the future is. And right now the emotions around Gavin Lux are very confused. So whatever he ends up being in 2026, I think will be a surprise to you and me. But there was no surprise whenever Gordon Wittenmyer wrote an article about MLB executives and their feelings on the next World Series team coming out of the NL Central and why the Reds weren't near the top. The next time you're going down to a live event, maybe it's a last minute idea, or maybe you're looking well ahead into the future, like say to a World Cup game or something next year. Game Time makes the ticket buying process simple. You can even set up price trackers like on those long timeout events like the World Cup, and Game Time will notify you whenever the prices drop. Game Time does so many great things when it comes to trying to get your next ticket to your next event, whether it's showing your view from your seat, giving you your all-in pricing up front before you ever add the ticket to the cart. So many different things that Game Time tries to make the ticket buying process simple for you. And of course, they've got this amazing offer for new users. You just download the app, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first order. So make that ticket buying process simple and add $20 worth of savings right on top of that with the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, because all you got to do is swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. I encourage you to keep the conversation going with Tim and myself after the show is over. You can follow us on X. You can follow Tim at TimDaniel518, and you can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can also follow Steve at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs. And we're on all the other socials as well. And check out at Locked On Reds on X as well. Talking about Reds baseball all the time. And I saw an article, Tim, from Gordon Wittenmyer. And I kind of want to preface this by saying, okay, Gordon Wittenmyer, the article was this. He talked with a bunch of executives at the GM meetings and polled them on the most likely next World Series appearance from the NL Central. Talking about Chicago, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Milwaukee. And the results were not surprising. 21 execs polled, 11 of them picked Chicago. And most of the reasons were, they got the most money, they spend the most money, they're the biggest market, all of the things that nobody would be surprised about. And I know that there are probably some people that are saying, well, it's Gordon Wittenmyer. Of course, the Cubs are the focus. But I would like to say that I actually don't mind Gordon Wittenmyer. I appreciate his point of view. Trying to think of the word. Not antagonistic. That's not the right word. But it's, the other point of view on Reds baseball and things like that. I appreciate where he's coming from, because I always thought if I had ever covered another team in another market, there would always be a little bit of Reds that trickled in with my coverage. And that's why I'm glad that I'm here. Yeah. But when it comes to this poll, the results are very unsurprising, because when you talk with other executives, they do the thing that everybody else does when they look at the NL Central and they say it's the Cubs because they're the biggest market. And that's distressing them.
Yeah. So if your listeners just saw me, my daughter came to say bye to me before she went to the library. So that's why I blew a kiss. So if anyone's wondering why that was all weird looking, don't worry about it.
It wasn't my direction, so then I figured that was probably the case.
Yeah. But I don't necessarily feel like it's a shock that the Cubs are definitely the favorite there in that circumstance. Like you said, the big market, they've been the team who's kind of been the most aggressive in the Central in years past, where, a situation like the Brewers where they haven't been aggressive, they just constantly won. Which is really irritating, by the way. But, the Cubs have been a team that have gone out and got guys, Kyle Tucker, Shota, now Cody Bellinger. Now they've lost a lot of those guys too, obviously. But they have made the effort consistently to go out there and try to improve their roster year in and year out, where, let's be frank, the Reds have not. Now this last trade deadline, I like the Reds moves. Now, do I ever want to see Zach Littell pitch in a playoff series again for us? No. But I did appreciate, that circumstance where the Reds kind of went out and made moves to try to get the team better for a playoff push. So in this circumstance to kind of come back, because I have a tendency to do that, I apologize. I do feel like we're in a situation where it's much easier to pick the Cubs in that case. Now, the one person who says the Reds, you get it, right? Because if all these players that we're banking on reach their ceiling, it's a pretty darn good baseball team. It's a team that consistently, if like the Reds make an effort, if God knows what's going to happen for the 27 season with the CBA, if those guys reach their talent levels, we have a lot of excitement for this team for the future. But that is if. And this one person, this one executive seems to be banking that the if can happen, because if Elly De La Cruz is himself, then he's probably an MVP. If Matt McLain reaches to a place where we're going to go, then he has a tendency to be a multi-time All-Star. If Hunter Green can actually stay on the mound, has a chance to be a Cy Young winner. If Tyler Stevenson keeps developing, has a tendency to be a really good power hitter in the middle of your lineup. But like I said, if. So if this executive feels like the if is very possible, then don't be unanimous. Don't be anonymous. Come on Locked On Reds and tell us why you feel this way, because we need this positivity in Cincinnati Reds land.
And it's also important to note that in the article, Gordon Whitmire talks about the fact that he talked to all NL Central executives, including Nick Krall, but the rules were you can't vote for your own team. So it's not as if the one vote came from Nick Krall, because he wasn't allowed to in this exercise.
We would have known by the quote anyway, because it would have been way too long of saying nothing.
Yeah. Well, see, and stuff and things and junk. Something like that would have sounded similar. But I also know that, like, Gordon made a point of saying that I don't think they were all in the same room together. This wasn't like hey, there's one guy that decided he wanted to be dissenting and not pick the Cubs or the Brewers, because the Pirates and the Cardinals were not voted on at all. It was 11 for the Cubs, 8. Well, I'm trying to do my math on the fly here. It's not great. 11 for the Cubs, 9 for the Brewers, 1 for the Reds in the 21 execs that were polled. I think it points to, and you mentioned the CBA, I think it points to why the idea of a salary cap is the focus for this next CBA war. Not necessarily because you're trying to bail out teams like the Reds or teams like the Pirates or teams that aren't necessarily ran that well. It's because you're trying to create more parity, because right now the answers are simple. When it comes to who is the favorite to make it to the World Series out of the National League, it's the Dodgers, it's the Mets, it's the Phillies, and it's the Cubs. And you could probably make an argument for the Braves so long as they don't go through another injury Armageddon like they went through last year. And you could probably make an argument for the Brewers because they're just a well-run organization, but we saw what happened to a well-run organization that dominated the regular season year in and year out, and they faced the Dodgers in the playoffs. The Dodgers are just better because they spend more money. And it's the same in the American League. You can name those contenders too. And it's all based on market size and money spent. If you limit that, the money spent part of that, then you can create parity, which is the job of the league. It is not the job of other teams to spend less money because so-and-so is spending less money. It is their job to win. And so if the league limits that, then that makes sense. And so I guess I'm advocating for it a little bit. I think it's weird that I'm advocating for something that helps out owners that don't want to spend. But if that's what they're going to do, and that's what they've done all my life, it's not as if Bob Castellini and Phil Castellini and the ownership group that is in charge of the Reds is going to wake up tomorrow and put $300 million into the roster.
Correct.
So let's bring other things into play that at least increase the parity a little bit, because I would have a hard time believing, like, say if the poll were different and he said that 11 of the 21 execs polled pick the Reds, I would kind of raise an eyebrow at that and be like, I don't know. Like, I would love to agree with you, but based on the resources of the Cubs, I have a hard time agreeing with that.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at too, because I just feel like with the resources, like you mentioned, I feel like that's what kind of makes us go back and forth. And, you know, when people are kind of reluctant on the Brewers, it makes a ton of sense because history says, yeah, they're very good.
They're about to trade Freddie Peralta, and like, can they really replace
and then they'll win
another
94
guy?
games. Yeah.
Right. Like,
It's like,
probably.
Yeah, it's unbelievably maddening.
Mizrowski will stop walking people. And it'll become
Yeah,
an ace.
exactly. Christian Yelich will find his MVP form and hit like 370, and
he's got some sort of serum that makes him ageless, or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever Ryan, well, not whatever Ryan Braun had. Anyway,
can't say that part. Yeah. But they've seen just kind of press the right button. So the Reds just kind of have not had the ability to press the right buttons. The Reds are the team that they're the mom at the soccer game that has all the band-aids, right? Like, oh, my kid got scraped in the grass. I got the band-aid. I'll clean the wound. That's the Reds' attempt at everything, is just put a band-aid over and see what happens. So maybe one of these days that's not the case. Maybe the CBA will be the thing that makes it not the case. But as you have mentioned, I also am not holding my breath that that's going to be how it turns out.
Something I want to talk about later this week. You mentioned Tyler Stevenson. I definitely want to dive into him because there were some peripheral numbers that really excited me for his performance coming into this year. And I feel like we constantly say that about him, but I think this is going to be the one because this is the most important year for him. We'll talk about that later on this week, but also following along with the CBA thing, like, I want to discuss this, and I'm going to try to get some different guests in here this week. I don't want to keep you locked up all week. Definitely gonna have you on again.
You know how desperate I am to be in front of a microphone right now.
Talking Reds, heck yeah, man. But I also want to talk about the fact that I think that this CBA could really fix something that we as Reds fans know in our hearts, and that is that the guys who run this team are not running it based on merit, but running it based on how they, balance a spreadsheet. I think if you get a salary cap, that changes. I'd like to discuss that a little bit more later on this week. So make sure you check us out. Make sure you subscribe. Become an everydayer of the Locked On Reds podcast, because we'll be with you all throughout the offseason, talking Reds baseball. When there's snow on the ground, which there isn't right now, I know it's forecasted for some point this week. But when there's snow on the ground, when there's ice on the sidewalks, we'll be talking baseball right here on Locked On Reds. Make sure you go check out Locked On MLB. Sully's got you covered for views around the league and all of his historical references when it comes to baseball and Hollywood and all kinds of things. He weaves it in very, very well when he talks baseball. That's Locked On MLB. It's just like Locked On Reds. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and the #1 sports podcast network in the country. But you know that as for Tim, Steve, and myself, we will be Locked On Reds every single day. I think Steve's on a boat somewhere in the middle of the Caribbean because he can't stay in the Pacific. Sometimes he's got to see the Atlantic.
Yeah, that's as Steve gets right there.
I forgot to ask if he ever goes to the Indian Ocean.
I'm sure he's been there. If he doesn't,